Last I counted, I had about 512 games, split about half big box PC and the other half console.
I lost count a long time ago. I've just got boxes.
But you've actually got one of the, you've got a complete Resident Evil collection, don't you?
Until during the move, I cracked my Sega Saturn disc, so I have to replace that.
No.
But I did have a complete English collection. And now I just got to get Resident Evil 7 on Xbox One.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. Well, and believe it or not, when we said this panel is about collecting retro video games, but we will probably at some point touch on more modern consoles, Xbox One, PlayStation 4, Wii U, the Switch, stuff like that. But primarily our focus is on games that are, should we set a date cutoff? What do you consider retro?
What I consider retro would be like, to me, NES and beyond, because I was a guess 5 when I got really into games, and that was the Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo. So I would consider retro before I got into it.
And I have a little bit of a different philosophy on that. I was born in '83, so what I collected primarily is from my birth year on. Anything before that is awesome, but not my primary focus.
Right.
But I consider anything retro really 2 generations back and before. So we're not talking the Xbox 360. We're talking. I'm actually talking like the original Xbox, and back is what I consider retro.
Which I don't want to admit is old yet.
You and me both. That just makes me feel old. But you know, one of the things we get asked a lot, and it's true for almost any collector, why do you collect? Well, for me, and I think for Tyler as well, it's a great way to remember and to archive the past. You know, we have, welcome. But you know, we have, it's a great way to remember the games of the past that we absolutely adored. I mean, you're a huge Resident Evil fan. So for you, having a complete English collection is a great way for you to remember all the wonderful Resident Evil games that you played.
Yep, go back and play them anytime.
Yep, you can, and that goes right into the next one. It allows you to relive the happy times. So if you had a particular emotion while playing a game, you can sometimes trigger that emotion again just by replaying it. Of course, bragging rights, that's another good reason to collect. I like to throw out the figure 512 games. It sounds really cool. May not always be cool, but it sounds really cool.
Or when you hit a game no one's heard of.
Exactly. All right, out of your collection, what's probably your most obscure game?
Well, I have a game called Bombing Islands, which I once posted online, and it offered a $50 GameStop gift card to anyone who could tell me what it was, and no one could.
Really?
No one could.
Oh, that's awesome. I probably, for my weirdest or most esoteric game, I honestly don't know that I've got one that's really weird. I've got some rare stuff, but not stuff that's really kind of weird.
So you need to get Challenge Geek for your collection.
Exactly. Or, you know, some CDI porn, something like that. Yeah, I just really can't think of something that I've got that's really just weird. Coolest was probably the copy of, one of the coolest in my collection is my signed copy of Gears of War for Windows. I got Cliff Bleszinski and Mike Capps from Epic to Silent.
Nice.
Yeah. Which, if you, one thing you'll note, I love video game guests. We don't have any this year really, except for Tyler and Chris. But video game guests tend to be they're either very reserved or just very gregarious. And like Cliff Bleszinski and his wife Lauren were just amazing. Sid Meier, who I've met, wonderful man. So if you ever get a chance, if you can go to a con that's got gaming guests, I definitely recommend it. But when it comes to collecting video games, have you actually priced what your collection's worth?
No, I have not. There's some games that I know what they're worth, but there's a lot of games that I don't know. Like I have a game that I didn't even realize was worth a lot until Tech Exchange got in it recently. I found out how much they had it for.
Really?
Yeah, so some of the games I had no idea were worth a lot. There's another game somebody asked me about at our game nights recently, and I said, yeah, I have a copy, but I said it's really awful and it's not worth using as a coaster for your drink here. And then because I price things at work, I looked up how much it was, and it's $200.
Wow.
So
Yeah, probably my most, okay, I've actually got two different best, most expensive games. One of them was a copy of Chrono Trigger, card only. I picked up for $4 at a flea market. Yeah, it makes your hurt inside, doesn't it?
Yes.
And then I think it was another SNES game. It was my complete collection of the Dot Hack games. I traded them in because I wanted to get a Retron 5 when they came out, and we'll get to like the Retron 5 in a minute. But that was worth at least $200 for the whole collection. I think it was worth about $200 to $250.
sounds about right. Stuck one on eBay recently.
Yeah, because I had all of them with all the DVDs and all the manuals.
And if you got the G-Use series too, you can open up to 400 easily.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I ripped off. Want to trade into that?
I hope it wasn't me.
No. Okay. No. Well, I mean, it was to a local. It was in Richmond. It was to a local store. So I mean, at least I didn't get ripped off by GameStop.
True.
If I'm going to get if I have to choose how I'm going to get ripped off, I would much rather it be a local store that rips me off than.
Well, see, we got a complete collection of that recently, so when you said that, I was like, oh.
No. This was a couple years ago. You're good.
Okay.
What's interesting about collecting retro video games is that, as we were just saying, it can be both an expensive and an inexpensive hobby to collect for. I mean, you've got, like for instance, if I bought that copy of Chrono Trigger, just the card, at what it's valued at, I'd have been looking at $80 or $90. Now, I was lucky. I found it for $4. That doesn't always happen. So it can be both expensive and inexpensive.
Oh yeah. There's a guy in town who's got the devil's luck, as I say, because he found 3 copies of Turok Rage Wars Great Card. The limited reproduction is $200 easy.
Mm-hmm.
He bought all 3 of them at a yard sale. Different yard sales, but he found them all for less than $10.
Well, I looked into a really good deal. There was a guy in Roanoke, and this was a couple of years ago, who was doing a big yard sale at his house. I don't know if I ran into you there or not. But he had a Jaguar.
Is this on Windsor Road?
Yeah, I think so.
That's because I live directly next to the house.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I thought we talked about that before.
Yeah.
So anyways, the guy was like, what's interesting is certain sellers, they know they're selling to one of 2 types of people. They're either selling to someone who really loves video games and wants to play the systems and the games, or they're selling to a reseller. They will price accordingly. So, if you're sitting there on your phone pulling up price lists, or you've got a sheet of paper that's got all these prices on it, don't be surprised if the offer they make you is a little bit higher than the offer they make the guy behind you who's just raving on and on about his favorite video game system and the games that he's getting for it. In this case, I fell into the latter category. So $50. I got a working Jaguar with controller in a box, and White Men Can't Jump, and the Jaguar tab. Because he's like, you look like somebody who's going to appreciate the system and the games, and not just try to make a quick buck off me. So just keep that in mind. I mean, it's one thing to be looking for something in particular and pricing it, but it's another thing to be sitting there going, okay, he's got Gyromite for $5, or he's got Balloon Fight for $3, and stuff like that. It does make a difference. One thing I recommend, and I'm sure you probably agree, is setting a goal for your collection. Like in your case, complete English copy of Resident Evil.
Yep.
In my case, I'm a little different. I'm actually going more for systems than for games. I prefer to have at least 1 game for every system I have. Kind of hard to test it, demo it, if you don't have at least 1 game. But I'm going for a complete USA released game system collection from 1983. Which reminds me, I've still got to get that SNK Pocket Color.
I was going to ask.
Still got to get that SNK Pocket Color off of you. But that actually, I'm actually at this point missing only 3 systems of the ones that are going to be in any way obtainable or findable. I'm missing a Neo Geo AES. Good luck with that. I'm missing a Turbo Express. Again. And I'm missing a SNK Pocket Color, which I don't have to laugh at. But really, if you're going to collect, there's a difference between collecting and hoarding. Yeah, I know it sounds weird, but it's true. There is a difference between collecting and hoarding. So, a hoarder, everything. He wants everything and gets rid of nothing. Collector wants specific things, gets rid of what they don't want. So, like some people focus on what they played as a kid, particular system, genre, and those, I mean, that's really where you need to set kind of your expectations. There's like, okay, how many of you guys have heard of John Hancock? Okay, so you guys know he's got like 25 complete collections. That is both insanity and genius. Insanity because, holy crap, 25 complete collections? My God! I want to know what he does for a living.
He's John Hancock.
Yeah. He just signs as John Hancock on everything.
He just burps money.
Yeah, yeah. Really, 25 complete collections. I would just love to know what he does for a living.
Country.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I think we would be trumped by our current budget situation.
See what you did
Yeah, thank you. But no, so you've got people that can do that. But realistically, I would just tend to focus it on either one system, a particular genre, or just something along those lines. It helps you focus because sometimes you might come across like the guy that did the art sale. He had probably 100, 200 games there. I actually was only interested in probably 10 or 20 of them. And that's simply because, one, I could afford all of them, and two, I didn't want most of them. Gyromite's a cool game. It's my kind of game. You know, I love the NES, but if I see a copy of Gyromite, even if it's in mint condition, complete in box, sealed, unless it's a really, really good deal, I'm going to pass it up. How about you?
Same. You know, I see a lot of really rare games coming to work a lot, and I'm like, wow, it's really amazing, like Turok Rage Wars.
Yeah.
But I was like, I don't want to play it. I'm never going to play it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to spend. And we have it priced appropriately. I'm not going to spend that money on it.
Yeah.
Same with recently, one of our local stores got a sealed, or not sealed, but complete in box Evo for SNES.
Ooh.
Which is a game I enjoy, but
It's $200 worth of enjoyment.
Right, well, complete in box is $300.
Okay, so $300 worth of
So
enjoyment.
I would much rather play the cart-only version, which is still questionable whether it's that much of enjoyment or not. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to spend too much money on something. I just want to play to remember. And if it's a game I thought I was going to spend 500 hours on, yes, but.
Well, okay, but that makes sense because if you think about it, all right, $300 for the game, and you're going to get, what'd you say, 500 hours of enjoyment?
Yeah.
All right, so you're talking less than $1 per hour of enjoyment. Okay, fiscally, that actually makes sense.
Which that falls into the stuff I collect.
Yeah.
So if it's not that.
The other two big questions for focusing your collection is how large do you want your collection to be? I'm very blessed. I've got my own house, and so I've got a library down in the basement that's half books and half video games. However, that is pretty much my storage space for it. So, if I hit the limits of that storage space, hey, I could see a complete box copy of Evo for 20 bucks. I don't have the room for it, can't get it. So you've got to determine how large do you want it to be and how much storage space do you have. And for video games, you want something preferably around 50% humidity, cool and dry. You want a little bit of humidity to prevent dry rot. Because if you just have, it's great to have a cool, very dry environment for some things. Video games, manuals, depends on the card. So, especially the labels will dry rot. So where do you want to start looking? Well, in this area it's a little bit fun because thanks to the amount of collectors we have, Goodwill is like a chicken bone at Thanksgiving dinner 2 days later. It's picked clean. But if you're going to go to Goodwill and look, especially if you're visiting a new town, my suggestion is to check the electronics section. You wouldn't believe what people donate and what you'll find in the electronics section. You can find consoles, controllers, all sorts of stuff. Books, sounds weird, but you can also find strategy guides there. So if you collect strategy guides or you're looking for a strategy guide for a particular game, it's a great place to look. The CDs, VHS, and DVD section is really good because a lot of times you'll find clamshells like Xbox, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 1 in the CD section, and just they don't know what they are, so they just throw them there. The board game section sounds weird again, but there's a method to my madness. Big box PC games often are lurking in the board game section. Again, they're about the same size. Nobody knows what to do with them, so they put them in there. And then if you check at the front of the store, sometimes they're at the back, depending on how the Goodwill's set up, but they'll have glass display cases. Some Goodwills have a knowledgeable staff, or more knowledgeable than most. So they'll say, oh look, this looks like one of them game things, and we put them all together in here. And they might be priced a little bit higher if that's the case, but oftentimes you can get them anywhere from 99 cents. If they go by the amount of CDs in the package, sometimes they're as much as $7 or $8. It just varies from store to store. Other thrift stores, I use a similar tactic to Goodwill for those. Some of them are mom and pops, and they're weird, just organized weird. Some of them are more almost chains, but they're organized more similar to Goodwill. It just varies. Now, do you do a lot of yard sales?
Not often. I usually don't hear about them at all.
Okay.
So.
Well, believe it or not, my mother and I, when I was living at home, every Saturday during the summer, we would go out and hit yard sales. If you go to a yard sale and you don't see any video games, but you see there's teenage or kid items for sale, or the guy, or you just see somebody standing around that obviously is running the yard sale, ask them if they have any video games that you want to sell. Sometimes they'll go, I forgot to put those out. I'm glad you asked. Other times they'll go, oh, we hadn't thought about selling those, but Johnny's off at college and he hadn't played these things in years. We'll show you what we got.
90% of the time, parents do not know what their kids have.
Which is wonderful for collectors.
Horrible for the kids.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if your other collection is action figures.
Well, although some parents will recognize if you've kept it in the box, parents will recognize often that it's a collectible. But yeah, if you just have action figures like on display, yeah, I can totally see those ending up in the yard sale. Flea markets are great. A lot of flea markets will have probably at least one person who's got some video games on their table. Haggle. For two reasons. One, often you'll get a lower price than what they've got marked on it, which is great. Two, if they don't have a price on it, they may not know what it's worth, or they may know, or they may have an idea. And by haggling, you can sometimes get the price where you want it, and it's like playing poker. You don't want to show your face, because I have to tell. If you know me and you see me at a flea market, I have to tell. My eyes flash. If I see something like a video game or something that's I know is worth something, my eyes flash. So oftentimes you'll see me at a flea market with my head down, just looking at the table, to prevent people from seeing my tell. But just get there early, take your time, and haggle. Now, do you do Craigslist ads?
Not anymore.
Okay, well, let me ask why, if you don't let me ask.
You'd either have, there was enough experiences of no-shows, things not being as described, and then you have to deal with aggression on anger when you're like, that's not what you had. Like maybe somebody will post a picture where they find a good condition on eBay, and maybe they have it, but it looks like their dog had their way with it. Happened with a Bomberman once. I was looking for Bomberman 64 to replace a copy, and I found a guy on Craigslist, and the picture was like excellent, complete in box, no box, label ripped in half, and then the guy got kind of pissy about it.
I'm with you. I don't recommend Craigslist ads unless it is someone you've regularly dealt with or can be vouched for by somebody else.
Now there are some local businesses in town who do use Craigslist, but you can also kind of tell. Like I've seen a couple from like Game Junkies, and they put their card on there.
Yep.
And Tech Exchange, I just know what their store looks like.
Well, yeah, I was about to say, normally when I'm looking on Craigslist, I look for the address. So if I see like 10 posts in a row with the same address, I'll look the address up and see if it's a business or a residence.
And another thing about Craigslist too, if you want to use it, you see something that's just like, I really want it, but I don't know the source. There is a local store in town, Super Game Station, that offers to, he said he's open to people using his store as a Craigslist meet.
And actually, I didn't put that on here, and I'll explain why in a second. But stores, some areas have an abundance, some areas have no video game stores except for GameStop. We're lucky in Roanoke, very lucky. We have got 4, and correct me, I was about to say, if I miss one, feel free to let me know.
5.
Is it 5?
Yeah, Game Junkies has 2 stores.
I count them as one.
Okay.
I count them as one.
All right, 4 after we've lost 2 in this year too.
Who did we lose?
We lost Game Traders and Electronic Expo.
Oh, okay. I forgot about Game Traders. I knew about Electronic Expo. All right, so but still in the Roanoke area, we actually I think what ended up is we got oversaturated. You've got Super Game Station. You have got Game Junkies, the 2 locations, Cash Converters, and Tech Exchange. Cash Converters, of the bunch, Cash Converters is the oddest one to include in the list. But it's because you got somebody like Tyler working for them to make sure everything is in excellent condition and organized properly. Pawn shops, which is basically what Cash Converters is, don't always carry video games. They don't always make them a lot of money. So they don't like taking them in, they don't like selling them. Cash Converters, because of the excellent way that they handle their merchandise, are a great place to look. And they price reasonably. Mostly because they have a knowledgeable staff. In some cases, you either have them to go, it's $50 a game for like Gyromite. I just like using that as an example. Or you've got a store that prices everything far too low. Gyromite for $1.
The novice version of Gyromite, that could be a real bad screw up on who's selling it.
Yeah. But then you've got the true make themselves a video game stores. Because that's not Cash Converter's primary source of revenue. Super Game Station, Game Junkies, and not the Tech Exchange, but Super Game Station and Game Junkies are primarily game stores. Tech Exchange I don't lump in there because they're an electronics retailer who happens to have a very good selection of games. Great store. I mean, I will not diss any of the ones we've got here because they all have their strengths, they all have their weaknesses. If you're looking for really, really weird, Super Game Station. If you're looking for more common but greater quantity, Game Junkies. And then if you want to see just really cool random stuff show up, Tech Exchange and Cash Converters.
And even then, like, you can still find the really rare that you don't expect to be there at the other stores too.
Now, the last place to start looking are conventions. Not Mysticon, yet. I'm trying to get more video game vendors to apply for our vendor list. We're not a video game centric convention, so we don't have a lot of video game dealers, just the way we are. There are some conventions, MagFest, Portrait and Retro Gaming Expo, Calix. You'll notice I've only mentioned one East Coast, 2 West Coast. There aren't a lot on the East Coast at the moment that are well known. There are probably a bunch of smaller ones that I've just never heard of. But MagFest is probably the most well known on the East Coast. But those are where you want to start looking, and just know at a convention, you're probably going to have, if it's a video game centric convention, you're probably going to have an amazing range of goods. Probably going to be a little bit more expensive because you've got very knowledgeable people who know what they want for it. Now, here we've talked about finding it, and we've talked about haggling for it. But how do you price it? Now, I'm curious. What do you do for pricing?
I look up eBay.
Okay.
Sold listings, never active.
Yep.
Because people can have things on there.
Yeah, I put a gyromite on there for $700.
Yeah, and people aren't buying it. You also got to look at the average, not just the highest, because some people will, and I learned this from doing e-coms at Cash Converters, some people will put an item on eBay, jack up their auction, let it in, relist it, so people think that, oh, well, the last one went for last gyromite went for $700, this one should go for a lot more.
My rule of thumb for eBays are pretty much the same. Closed listings, drop the highest price and the lowest price. That's what I do.
I try and meet between.
Yeah.
But I'm not the only pricer at Cash Converters. But that's what I try and do whenever it is up to me.
Now, have you ever used price charting?
I have. The only thing I didn't like about price charting is I feel like it covers an average. But the average tends to be higher than what it is currently going for.
Okay.
And I try and keep the prices matched up with what it's currently going for.
Sure, no, I can understand that.
If you ever come into Cash Converters and our price is higher than what it's currently going for, bring it up to me. I like to match what it's currently going for.
Okay. That's actually, and you see, that's another thing, by knowing your local video game people, you can come across awesome stuff like that. Don't be afraid. That's one thing, you know, we are definitely geeks. And so we have some of the flaws that come along with that. Some of us are very introverted. Some of us aren't. It never hurts to befriend your local game people. And now, you always want to be careful in your local game community, same as any others. You've got toxic people, you've got awesome people. Eventually you'll figure out who's who. But don't let running into one toxic person kill your video game experience. Trust me, there's more than one asshole out there. Now, what you want to be on the lookout for when you're going for the games, so you found a game, you priced it. Now, what's wrong with it? That should be the first question you always ask yourself. What's wrong with it? Now, I'm going to show you, I've got two games here. Both complete in box. One of them is mint condition, complete in box. I've got all the maps. So I've got the cartridge. I've got all the maps. I've got the little sleeve. I've got the instruction manual. I guess I should say near mint. The manual in this case has a little tear in the corner. Not a huge thing, but it's there. The maps are still in great shape. They have a little piece of tape on one part, and they have just some sort of edging, which is kind of reasonable, something you would expect. This would probably go on the higher end of the pricing spectrum. Now, Wizardry 1 looks mint in box. Okay, got everything with it. And I love this game. I'm a big fan of the Wizardry series. Got the cartridge. Cartridge is in probably, I'd say, close to immaculate condition. Got the sleeve. Here's the problem. This is one thing you always got to look for. You notice on the back, manual's missing a big freaking chunk. And so I would actually put this probably closer to the middle, higher middle of the pricing range. What it was, if you open this up, there was a special strategy guide offer for the game. And somebody clicked the coupon and used it. Good on them, bad on the collector. So I would probably put this, like I said, higher middle. The boxes, you always want to look for. The Final Fantasy box is actually, I think, in really good shape. It's got a couple small creases, just normal wear and tear. Same with I think actually the Wizardry box is in better shape than, it's even got the little phone piece inside.
Oh, yeah.
So I think the Wizardry box is in better shape. All right, now since you do a lot of pricing, I said what I think. How would you do it?
So this, because of the shape of the manual, I probably wouldn't put it in mint.
Yeah.
Like, I'd probably go excellent.
Okay.
This, in all honesty, I'm looking at this here, and if somebody didn't try and save any money, I'd put this as mint, because your cart looks really good there.
Okay.
So that's how I would see that, and having the foam too, because I have seen people, when they look at complete NES games, question the foam piece.
Sure.
So this, like I said, that coupon wasn't cut, this would be the one. I'd be like, this is mint.
Okay. So I'm lucky. These are probably two of the gems of my collection. I have games that have scratch labels and stuff like that. When you're looking for them, first things first, check the game case. Check the game case. In fact, I'll give you an example. I was at a Goodwill in Charlottesville the other day. They had a copy of KOTOR 2 Sith Lords for PC. Jewel case. Great, don't have it. Love to have it. Open it up. Disc 2, Disc 3, Disc 4. Disc 1 happened to be from the original KOTOR. So I put it back. It was useless to me at that point. But you cannot count on the people at Goodwill to know. So you need to check them. Sometimes you'll find game cases with no disc at Goodwill. That's because somebody's stupid pilfered the game, or it was donated without it and Goodwill didn't check. You'll get game cases, like I said, with the wrong disc inside. Games that are heavily scratched or have very tarnished pins. Pins are, the nice thing about pins is, for the most part, they're cleanable, with a few exceptions. Discs, on the other hand, a scratch disc, there's a limit to what you can do to repair it. If it's got a deep cut, it may not be useful. If the silver, if the actual label is damaged, it's useless. Games with no label or a label that looks like it's been modified. For instance, if you looked on this Wizardry 1 and you noticed that this edge was turned up a little bit, I'd be a little concerned. Or if down here it was turned up a little bit, or was catty-cornered or shifted, I would be concerned. And I would ask, if possible, to test the game before I bought it.
That can also be a tell of repros. Repros are popular now. Even some of the stores locally are selling them if they come in, because people do want them. They're meant to be a cheaper alternative to rarer cards like a repro to Earthbound. Earthbound's a $200 card only game. Someone can reproduce it. It's supposed to be cheaper, but people have also realized people will pay the same for a repro. But it's also good to learn, because the label is one of the dead giveaways to repros, but learn how to tell the difference between a repro and an original.
Well, and even more sinister than that is someone who takes like a card with a, let's say this Wizardry 1, the the pin part was broken. So somebody takes this card, looks great, takes one of the screwdrivers, one of the bits, and actually swaps the card inside for another game, like Gyromite. Gyromite's great, but I want Wizardry 1.
Right.
So that's just one thing you got to keep an eye out for. If a screw looks loose, be on the lookout.
I've done that. It's not been sinister. I just had a copy of Star Wars for Super Nintendo. Card got messed up, so I swapped it with John.
Okay, but that's your own. But you're not going to then turn around and sell it.
But people do it. It's happened at cash converters. A bulk lot was traded in, and there was a copy of Castlevania, but when it was popped in, it was actually not Castlevania.
Yeah. And when you're looking at systems, the big thing is no cables or missing cables, or bent and broken connectors for any of them that are pin based. So just keep an eye out for those. Maintaining them. Try to clean your systems, power them on at least once a year. Some of us, we play our retro systems more than our modern systems. It's not a problem, but just make sure that it isn't dry rotting, capacitors haven't blown, anything like that. You should power it on and clean them at least once a year. For cartridge-based systems, I recommend denatured alcohol for cartridges and the connectors. It evaporates really quickly and cleans very well. CD-based systems, a good microfiber cloth and maybe a lens cleaner. And again, sort of cool, dry environment with a little humidity to prevent dry rotting. Anything I missed there?
Denatured alcohol. It's like a hydrogen peroxide.
No, this is actually a specific type of alcohol that is, it's a special way it is chemically made.
Okay.
I can't remember how it's made, but I know it's called denatured alcohol.
Okay, yeah. So that or hydrogen peroxide.
Mm-hmm.
I always tell people just use hydrogen peroxide because when I say alcohol, people go get the wrong alcohol.
Yeah.
And if you're using the wrong alcohol, it may clean it for the moment, but eventually you're going to have this black film that covers things, and there's no getting that off.
Playing collectible games. Well, this is always fun, especially if you have a game but no system. Now, for me, there's so many ways these days that you can play games without the dreaded word at the bottom. You've got the original systems, which is the hardest to do, but often the most fun because you're playing on the original system. Backwards compatible newer systems. For instance, the Xbox 360 plays something like 90% of the original Xbox games. Clone systems. I love my Roanoke 5. I know there's controversy about how this stuff was made for it, but at the moment it works great for me. But you've got the Roanoke 5, Retro Duo, the AVS Retro USB, which just came out, things like that. Those are great. They're a cheap way to play the original cards. Virtual consoles and e-stores on the current systems. Again, another cheaper way to play games that you might not be able to play otherwise. Suikoden 1 and 2, Earthbound. They are not cheap, but they're like $5.99 on the virtual console. Can't beat that.
Don't know if Chatterlight's on there though.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to check. Now, one thing I didn't mention in that list, and I don't know, you may disagree with me on this.
What's that?
Emulation. I'm not a fan of emulation for two reasons. I don't mind it because I understand in some cases, like MAME for arcade systems, I'd love to own every arcade PCB out there. Not going to happen. So I have a rule for emulation, and this also follows for piracy, but for emulation in particular, if I can get it legally, I won't do. If there's any way I can get it legally, I won't emulate.
That's exactly how I feel. There's also, as you have there, right in the little text underneath it, is a legal gray area. And I run a lot of local gaming meetups and stuff, and people ask about emulating games all the time. And I will not touch it. And people who say this is Roanoke, no one's going to crack down on you. You need to Google Atomic Arcade. That was a place downtown that was selling arcade machines with basically the equivalent of Raspberry Pi in it, running MAME, and the FBI came straight down and took all the stuff. So don't say that this isn't something that no one's going to do anything to you here just because we're like a smaller town. Like we were talking about earlier, sometimes there's toxic people, and it only takes one person who doesn't like you to be like, hey,
call
guys,
the FBI,
tip off.
And emulation is because, like, for instance, what a lot of people will say is, well, I own the card, therefore I can download the ROM and do as I wish. That's what makes it a gray area, because technically you do own the game. You just may not own the hardware to do it. That's where some people, at least morally and ethically, can get away with it. Like I said, I'm not even going to tell you about emulators that you can find or how to do it. I just recommend, if at all possible, avoid it.
Developers deserve their money too.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, if you can avoid it, absolutely 100% avoid it. Now, this slide, I actually went through my YouTube subscription list, and I pulled everybody I could think of that I was subscribed to that had video game knowledge. So, you probably will recognize, I'd say, most of the names.
I definitely recognize John Hancock.
Yeah. We talked about him earlier. But you've got Metal Jesus Rocks. And Metal Jesus Rocks is I kind of listed kind of what they do on their channel. He does retro collecting, hidden gems, what to look for, how to maintain them, how to play them. He's console focused with PC, and he does do a lot of big box PC collecting, which I think is awesome. So I'd say he's probably, I'd say actually he's probably 50-50 between console and PC. GameSack, which I absolutely adore, they're bi-weekly. They release a video every 2 weeks, and their videos are usually anywhere from 25 to 45 minutes long. And they do topics everywhere from hidden gems, system retrospectives, system specs, what to look for, and just general gaming information. They do a lot of video capture on their games. So you will actually, it's not just two dudes sitting there going, yo dude, I played Jabbermite today.
Oh, dude, that's awesome, dude.
Yeah, so they'll actually show you full footage of the games, which is fantastic. And not just stock footage, I mean, it's them playing. Lazy Game Reviews, he's actually based out of North Carolina. He's got Oddware, Hidden Gems, retrospectives, what to look for, and general information. He's PC focused with some console. He has got something like 4,000 boxed PC games. Happy Console Gamer, Johnny Millennium is a trip. He tells a lot of his stuff are retrospectives about his youth. When he played Final Fantasy IV, how he felt and what it was like to play it back when it came out. And he's actually got a heavy anime focus as well. If you're into watching anime or you're into art or drawing, I definitely recommend checking out Happy Console Gamer.
I gotta recommend him too, because like you said, like when he does the retrospectives on his youth, it makes it feel a lot more personal. You can kind of feel his love for it.
Yeah, exactly. Kinsey Burke is a newcomer to the scene. I found her through Metal Jesus Rocks. She does a lot of thrift store and she does a lot of pickups videos. She's starting to get into some retrospectives and some information about the different systems and games. She really is I recommend. I like to promote newer YouTubers. I definitely recommend checking her out. John Hancock, of course. It's John freaking Hancock. He needs to just put that F in his name. I mean, 25 complete collections. You want information? John Hancock's probably one of the best at it. And I'll talk to you about talking to them in a minute. John Riggs, again, is another one I got through Metal Jesus Rocks. He's more one that does like cart fixes. He's more electronics focused. So he'll do console fixes, cart fixes, repros, hacks, I mean the whole 9 yards. If you want esoteric, cool information about systems and games, check out John Riggs. And then finally, because I'll be honest with you, you can't have enough female gamers. And the reason is gaming is seen as a male-dominated area, and it's not. I think it's up to, what is it, 50? It's almost 50-50 these days, isn't it?
I mean, I feel like it's just completely even right now. Like, I just feel like you have some people who make a deal out of that, and that takes the realization away from it. But like when I was playing games online all the time, I felt like I ran into the same amount of girls as guys.
And I mean, the thing is, I want more gamers to play with. I don't care if you're male, female, pink, purple, green, or polka dot. You know, I want more gamers. So, you know, join. But that brings me into the last one, because Kinsey is one, again, like I pushed her. But pushing up roses is an absolute trip. She does mostly PC, a little bit of console. She loves Aladdin on the Genesis. She's working on speedrunning that, actually.
Competition, never mind.
But she focuses again on collecting, playing, maintaining hidden gems, reviews, and general information with a heavy PC focus. But she is just awesome. If you get a chance, I definitely recommend her Grim Fandango video because it's just awesome. Now, talking to these people, every one of the ones I listed, GameSack's probably, of the bunch, GameSack's probably the hardest to hear from. They will respond to you, but they've got real jobs, real lives, and it's just harder for them to respond, especially since it's a shared account. The others, they have real jobs too, but they tend to be a lot more active on Twitter and Facebook and Patreon. If you can, support them. Patreon is great. Like for instance, Metal Jesus Rocks. I pay $10 a month on Patreon. I have access to a chat room with Metal Jesus, and the other people that have paid into that Patreon tier, and I get to chat with them and ask them questions and chat with like-minded fans. It's amazing. Look them up on Twitter. Most of them will respond. They're great people. And we've got about, I don't know, about 5 to 10 minutes left. Do you guys have any questions? Comments? What are you saying? Phone numbers? I mean, I'll take anything at this point.
Do you guys play?
Got an N64 collection.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Why N64?
Just grew up with it.
Okay. That's awesome. And that's what a lot of people collect for, or the systems they grew up with. How about you?
Me and my boyfriend kind of merged our collections, and so we've got a nice one. We're working on getting shelves so we can put our systems up on our shelves.
Oh, awesome. So you're primarily console focused?
Yes, primarily. We don't have that much PC, mostly because if there's something we want to play on a PC, we most likely use Steam.
Yeah.
But yeah, so more console focused.
Nothing wrong with that at all. That's
How I
great.
am. That's for sure.
I can't remember when you introduced yourself. Did you introduce yourself to being part of Star Power Gaming?
I don't remember. Yeah, I'm part of Star Power Gaming if I didn't. So.
Yeah, I like to. I'm a member of myself. But Tyler is a member of Star Power Gaming, and they've actually got a panel after this on speedrunning. Yeah, I think it's in Ballroom D. C. It is in C. Okay, I knew it. And it was one of the 3. I had a 1 in 3 shot of getting it correct.
Actually, let's start with stairwell.
Into where?
Stairwell.
Oh well. Oh well. I think there's
Less
so much
stairwell
Jack. But I mean, there's a lot. Are you from the Roanoke area?
Yes. Well,
Okay.
sort of.
Sort of that surrounding
I
area.
moved here when I got to go to college, and then I've been here ever since.
Oh, okay, awesome. Well, I mean, there is a lot of people don't realize that there's a ton of video game activity in Roanoke. Star Power Gaming is one of the really good ways of getting into it. I said there's quite a few video game stores. The guys at the current video game stores are awesome. I don't have a problem with any of them. We may differ on that. I don't know if you do or not.
I don't think I have a problem really with anybody. If I do, I don't know about it. That's happened sometimes. But
No.
I found out I was in a blood feud with somebody once, and I was like, wow, I've never met this person. So I went and met them, and now we're good friends. So that
But yeah, with all the current stores we've got, they're great. They're fantastic. Go support them. I mean, that's really about it. Just support your local video game community. Be awesome to each other, and have fun. I mean, that's what it's all about. Is just having fun and being awesome to each other. So thank you guys for coming out. We really appreciate it. I will probably, with Tyler's permission, load this on YouTube later.
Yeah, go for it, man. Share it with me. I'll share it too.
Okay. And then if you have any other questions, you can catch me afterwards or catch Tyler, because we've got to clear out for the next panel. So thank you guys for coming by. Y'all are awesome.
Thank you guys.
I'm not sure actually.